This is the podcast to improve your English listening skills while learning something new in English. Every episode, we bring you interesting topics in simple and clear English, so you can listen, learn, and grow. So, sit back, relax, and let's get started.
Welcome to the deep dive. We're all set to, take a deep dive today into something really exciting and practical, I think, for a lot of you.
Yeah. It's all about travel and tourism, right?
Exactly. But we're going a bit deeper than just dreaming about our next vacation, although that's always fun.
We're going to look at how talking about travel, thinking about the vocabulary, the phrases, the whole experience can actually help you improve your English.
You actually sent us some really interesting material for this. Excerpts from perjalanan.wisata.pdf.
Ah, yes. For anyone who's curious, by the way, that translates to travel and tourism in English from Indonesian.
It's a great starting point. It's got a bunch of really useful stuff in there.
Definitely.
So what we're going to try and do today is extract the key vocabulary, the phrases you would actually use, maybe some conversation starters, all centered around travel, all to help you feel more comfortable and confident using English to talk about, your trips, past, present, future.
That's the goal.
Okay, so let's get right into it. The document starts off with different types of travel.
Right. So it starts broad with traveling in general.
Yeah.
Just the idea of going from one place to another. Then it gets more specific. You have going on vacation, which is usually for pleasure, right? Mm-hmm. Often involves some time off work, maybe a bit of luxury. Then you have road trip.
Ah, yes, road trip. It's more about the journey, exploring different places along the way, usually by car, classic road trip vibes.
Right, exactly. And then there's backpacking, which the document describes as perjalanan hemat dengan ransel, which translates to budget travel with a backpack.
So if you're thinking about maybe staying hostels, maybe moving around a lot, that's your backpacking trip.
What's really interesting here, I think, is how these terms not only describe how you're traveling, but also sort of hint at your style of travel. And maybe even your budget.
Yeah, someone who's backpacking probably has a different kind of trip in mind than someone going on vacation to, say, a fancy resort.
Yeah. Exactly. Different priorities, different experiences. Okay, so now let's think about where you might go. The document lists some popular destinations, and I think a lot of these will be familiar.
Yeah, we've got beach, obviously, for relaxing, soaking up the sun. Mountain, for those incredible views, maybe a bit of hiking.
And city. Of course, cities have that buzz, Lots of culture, history, things to see and do.
It then goes on to talk about desert, which I think has a really unique beauty and often that sense of remoteness, being far away from everything.
Absolutely. Then you have historical sites, which can be so fascinating, a real window into the past.
And national park.
Yeah, national parks, which often focus on protecting nature. So maybe you go hiking, see wildlife, that kind of thing.
Okay, so you've picked where you want to go. Now you need to figure out two things: where you'll stay and how you'll get there.
Right. So the document has a section on accommodation and transportation. Some key vocabulary here. You have hotel, of course, which is pretty self-explanatory.
Most of us have stayed in a hotel at some point.
Right. And then there's hostel, which is described as penginapan murah. So a cheaper place to stay, often with shared rooms. If you're backpacking, for example, you might stay in a hostel.
Then for getting around, you've got airplane, for when you need to cover long distances quickly.
Train, which can be a very scenic way to travel. sometimes more comfortable than flying, depending on the train.
And bus, often the cheapest option for both short and long journeys.
So knowing these basic words for different types of travel, destinations, accommodation, and transportation is going to be so helpful for you. It's like the foundation for any conversation you might have about travel.
Absolutely. But then, you need to actually be able to talk about your travels, ask questions, share experiences.
Right. So the document gives us some useful phrases for travelers, stuff you might actually say when you're in a new place.
Right.
Like, for example, how do I get to the airport?
I think we've all asked that question at some point, right?
Definitely. And a very close second. Where is the nearest hotel? Another essential one.
Then we have, I'd like to book a ticket to Bali. This is if you're, making plans. Notice the polite way it's phrased. I'd like to.
That's always good to remember. Being polite goes a long way, especially in a new place.
Much better than just saying, book ticket Bali.
Definitely. And the last phrase in this section is, can you recommend a good restaurant? This is if you're, looking for a good place to eat. Maybe something authentic, something local.
And asking for recommendations is also a great way to start a conversation with someone.
Absolutely. You might end up with a local telling you about their favorite dish, or even giving you directions to a hidden gem that you wouldn't find in a guidebook.
Okay, so we've got the vocabulary, the phrases. Now, how do we actually put it all together when we're talking about our own travel experiences?
Right, so the document has some examples of how you might describe past trips using different tenses. Like, if you're talking about something that happened last year, you might say, I went to Japan last summer.
Simple past tense.
Exactly. But if you're talking about places you visited at any point in your life, you might use the present perfect tense. Like, I have visited Bali 3 times.
So the present perfect is more about the experience itself, not a specific point in time.
Right. And then, of course, you want to be able to describe those experiences. The document gives us some useful phrases like, it was an amazing experience.
Very enthusiastic. You could also say, the beach was so beautiful and relaxing, or I loved trying the local food.
What's good about these examples is that they combine a general statement with specific details. So instead of just saying, the trip was good, you're explaining why it was good, what made it special.
And then what about talking about your future travel plans?
For that, you might use the present continuous tense, like, I'm planning to visit Thailand next year. This shows you're actively making plans.
Mm-hmm.
Or you might say something like, I want to go backpacking across Europe, expressing a desire or intention.
So you can use different tenses to talk about travel in the past, present, and future. It's all about choosing the right tense to convey your meaning clearly.
Exactly. Now, let's look at a short example dialogue from the document. It's a conversation between 2 people, A and B, about their travels.
It's a really good example of a natural, flowing conversation. It starts with A asking, have you ever traveled abroad?
That's a pretty common way to start a conversation about travel, right? Just a simple question to see if the other person has any travel experience.
And then B says, yes, I went to Japan last year. It was an amazing trip. Notice the exclamation point.
Showing enthusiasm.
And A follows up with, that sounds great. What did you like the most? This encourages B to share more details.
Right. Asking follow-up questions is so important. It shows you're interested.
And B answers, the food and the beautiful temples. Then B keeps the conversation going by asking A, have you traveled anywhere recently?
And A says, yes, I visited Bali last month. The beaches were incredible. So again, a positive statement with a specific detail.
It's a simple conversation, but it demonstrates a lot of the vocabulary and phrases we've been talking about.
Exactly. And it shows how you can use those things in a natural, flowing way.
The document then gives us some examples of how you might introduce yourself to someone by mentioning your travel experiences, which is a really nice way to break the ice and connect with people.
Yeah, it's a bit more interesting than just saying your name and what you do, right?
So we have Sarah. She says, "Hi, my name is Sarah. I love traveling. Last year I went to Paris and it was a dream come true. I enjoyed visiting the Eiffel Tower and trying delicious French food. I hope to visit Japan next."
So she starts with a general statement about loving travel, then gives specific details about a past trip, Paris, the Eiffel Tower, the food, and then she mentions a future travel goal. It's like a mini snapshot of her travel personality.
Exactly. Then we have Daniel. He says, "Hello, my name is Daniel and I'm passionate about traveling. So far I have visited 5 different countries, including Thailand and Italy. My favorite trip was to Bali because of its beautiful beaches and friendly people. I love experiencing new cultures and trying different foods. My dream destination is Switzerland because I love mountains and nature."
So Daniel gives even more detail. He mentions few countries, highlights his favorite trip, and why it was his favorite.
He also talks about his broader interests, new cultures, trying different foods, and then he shares a specific dream destination, Switzerland, because he loves mountains and nature.
These are just 2 examples, but they show you how you can use travel experiences to make your introductions more engaging and memorable. It gives the other person something to connect with.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here: vocabulary, phrases, example dialogues, introductions. But how can you make these conversations even more engaging and fun?
Well, the document has some great tips for that too. The first one is to berikan detail, lebih banyak, which means provide more details. So instead of just saying, "I went to the beach," you could say, "I went to this beautiful beach in Bali called Nusa Dua. The water was so clear and the sand was white as snow."
I can practically feel the sand between my toes.
Right. It paints a much more vivid picture for the listener.
Okay, what's the next step?
The next one is gunakan ekspresi dan emosi, which means use expressions and emotions. The example given is, "It was breathtaking." So, showing how you felt about something, whether it was amazing, surprising, even a little disappointing, can make your conversation more lively and relatable.
So instead of just saying the view was nice, you could say the view from the top of the mountain was absolutely breathtaking. Much more impactful.
Exactly. Then we have Tanya balik lawan bikara, which means ask follow-up questions. This is so important because it keeps the conversation going and shows that you're genuinely interested in what the other person has to say.
Like if someone tells you they went to Thailand, you could ask, "Oh, that's awesome. What was your favorite part of the trip?"
Right. Or did you try any interesting food?
Asking those follow-up questions turns it from a one-sided sharing session into a real conversation.
Okay. And the final tip is berlatih dengan menceritakan pengalaman pribadi, which means practice by sharing your own personal experiences.
So even if you don't have someone to practice with right now, you can still talk about your travels out loud to yourself. Maybe even record yourself.
The more you do it, the more comfortable and fluent you'll become. It's all about putting this vocabulary and these phrases into practice.
And remember, these tips aren't just about improving your English. They're about being a good conversationalist in general, no matter what language you're speaking.
Absolutely. Being engaged, being curious, sharing details, expressing your feelings, These are all key ingredients for any good conversation.
Okay, so let's recap what we've covered today. We've talked about different types of travel, popular destinations, accommodation and transportation options. We've looked at some useful phrases for travelers, how to talk about past and future trips, and even how to introduce yourself using your travel experiences. And we've just gone over some tips for making those conversations even more engaging.
All of this comes from the document you sent us, perjalanandanwisata.pdf, which, just to remind you, is travel and tourism in English. It's packed with useful information for anyone who wants to talk about travel more confidently and fluently in English.
And think about it, travel is something that comes up in conversations all the time, right? Whether you're meeting new people, chatting with colleagues, even making small talk.
Being able to share your travel experiences or even just your dreams of traveling can really help you connect with people on a deeper level.
It's a universal topic. Everyone has some connection to travel, even if it's just a dream of going somewhere someday.
Absolutely.
So, as you think about everything we've talked about today, I have a question for you, our listener. What place sparks your curiosity the most right now? And what's one English phrase you feel ready to use to talk about it?
We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
Thank you for watching this video. Hopefully useful. Don't forget to like and subscribe.